has started Laketran has started screen sharing, but I don't have anything.
Yes, something's different on Laketran's end because my screen keeps rotating through all the meeting participants, and normally it's the Laketran welcome screen, if you will.
Interesting. Give me a second and I will redo sharing.
That's better.
Yeah, much better.
It actually worked.
What do you guys see now?
It's like the Brady Bunch.
All right, so let me try and reshare the PowerPoint screen.
Well, that seemed to work too.
Do you now see the March 2021 Board of Trustees meeting slide?
No, it's 2018. I'm just kidding.
We've gone back in time.
Yeah, I think you got everything perfect, Ben.
Yep.
All right, I must have clicked the wrong screen to share. Sorry about that.
Ben or Vicky, I believe Dale Schiavone said he was not going to be able to make it. He's on vacation.
Yes, that's what he told me.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and get started, knowing that Donna will probably join us a couple minutes late. Let's call today's Board of Trustee meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Filkowski,
Present.
Martin,
Here.
McNamee, Montrella,
Here.
Schiavone, Sheets,
Here.
Spence,
Here.
Swanson,
Here.
Zibble.
Here.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. If everyone could please try and stand for the pledge, that would be great. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. Mr. Zibble, would you be able to read the mission statement?
Certainly. Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation services to all Lake County residents, with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
That's great. Thank you so much. Ben, are there any public comments in the boardroom or in any virtual room?
We have received no public comments either virtually or in person.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees board meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Spence, seconded by, I believe, Mr. Sheets. Vicky,
Yes.
if you could please call the roll.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee, Montrella,
Abstain.
Sheets,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, everyone. And at this time, I am going to turn the meeting over to Ben if he's going to do an introduction for the employee engagement results presentation.
Sure, thank you. So we completed a employee engagement survey, as I informed the board about in some previous meetings. Tonight, we are going to hear a presentation from Dr. Ernest Hoffman, who is the Director of Assessments and Research Development at Pradco, which is the firm we hired to do the work. So he will walk us through sort of the results of the survey, which I'm pleased to say are very positive, and be able to answer any questions about sort of the methodology or any sort of details about how the survey worked. With him, we have also Aaron Kowalski, which is our sales representative, and Carla, I'm sorry, I can never pronounce your last name correctly, who you guys will hear from a little bit later in the meeting. And so with that, Dr. Hoffman, if you would like to take it away, just let me know when you'd like to advance the slides and I will move them for you.
That sounds great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your time. Just to briefly introduce myself, Dr. Ernest Hoffman, I direct assessments and research and development for Pradco. And so we'll be going through the results of an engagement survey we conducted with Laketran employees at the beginning of February. The survey lasted about 2 weeks. And just want to explain the survey a little bit at a high level to give you a sense for what employees were asked to provide their opinions about. So they were given a 60-item survey that was multiple choice. For each of the items on the survey, they could either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with the item. And then at the end of the survey, they were given 3 open-ended questions to respond to, namely, what do they like most about working at Laketran? What would they change? And how did they feel about Laketran's ongoing response to COVID-19? And so the goal of this presentation is to take you through the results that came out of that survey for Laketran overall, as well as for some select employee breakdown groups that we were asked to look at in terms of the data. Ben, if you want to go ahead and advance it. Thank you. So one thing that we do for a standard of comparison is to look at your results in comparison to the last 20 organizations that have done an engagement survey with us. It's a way to benchmark and to understand, quote unquote, how good these results are. So that starts here with this slide where we look at participation for the survey, which was 72%. That's slightly higher than the average participation we see in these surveys. Overall company engagement was at 84%. And that is also higher than what we have seen if we do a rolling average across our last 20 surveys that we have done, where average engagement was at 78%. What's interesting is that the organizations represented in those 20 last surveys are a whole variety of organizations in different industries. So we do have social services represented there, but we also have pretty heavy manufacturing sector that's represented, some healthcare, and so different industries there, but Laketran scored above average, both in terms of participation and overall engagement. You want to advance, Ben? So what this slide shows you are the 10 categories that we measure in terms of engagement. Those are on the left-hand side. And then the numbers that you are seeing represent the percentage of employees at Laketran who participated in the survey and who indicated that they were engaged with regard to these aspects of working for the organization. So for pride in job, that's taking pride in the work that you do, and that was the highest scoring category with 93% of employees indicating engagement. Nature of the work was next, and then you can look right on down the page there, relationships with coworkers, role clarity in terms of definition and expectations, and then moving on down, you see that the 2 lowest categories there were recognition and appreciation and communication, which we'll put into some context here over the next couple of slides. If you want to advance it, Ben. All right, so this slide begins to compare your results to those last 20 organizations that we surveyed. And first thing that you're looking at here are the top 4 dimensions for engagement at Laketran. So pride in job was number 1, followed by nature of the work, which is a general understanding of the way the work is set up, feeling like the work is a good match for someone's skills and abilities. Relationship with coworkers, and then role definition and expectations. You see in the next column how Laketran scored on those, how average organizations scored on these same dimensions over the last 20 surveys. And then you can see how Laketran ranked on these dimensions compared to other organizations. On the whole, I'd point out a couple of trends here. First of all, you see that the top 3 dimensions for Laketran were the same as the top 3 dimensions for the last 20 surveys. So Laketran is really on track in terms of what employees are most engaged about when we compare your results to the results of those other organizations. The other thing I'll point out is that if you look at Laketran's engagement percentage over and against the average for those last 20 surveys, that by and large, Laketran is scoring above the average. That is particularly true for Pride and Job, where Laketran was 9% above, and role definition and expectations, which was 5% above the average that we see. So all in all, this is a really positive result and great to see. You want to go ahead, Ben? Thank you. So now what we do is to look at the 4 lowest categories as far as engagement. And these are actually ranked from lowest down. So communication was the dimension on the survey where employees indicated the least amount of engagement. And so these are ordered 10, 9, 8, and 7. And you can see that similarly, the trend is that Laketran was scoring well above the average, even when it came to these lower categories. So certainly for recognition and appreciation, you were at 13% higher than the average over the last 20 surveys. The other thing I would point out with organizational culture showing up here is that with a lot of drivers being deployed and out on the road, they're not necessarily around the building and in a position to create a very strong organizational culture the way that a lot of our organizations are able to do so because of the fact that they're in manufacturing facilities or they're in, a single healthcare facility, and they're interacting with each other a lot more probably on a daily basis than the drivers who made up the bulk of the respondents to the survey are interacting with each other. That said, organizational culture too scored higher than the average across the last 20 surveys. So that's really good to see. And we saw a lot of positive comments about Laketran as an organization in the open-ended feedback to support that. I'm ready, Ben. All right, so next we were asked to divide the results up and to look at some key breakdowns within the organization. So the first group that we were asked to look at was full-time versus part-time employees. The one thing that really stood out to us, having done a lot of surveys where we're asked to do this employee designation, is that part-time employees actually came across as being more engaged than full-time employees. Both look good here, but it's rare for us to see part-time employees actually scoring higher for engagement because they often feel that they're left out or that maybe they don't have the same opportunity available to them that the full-time employees have. But in this case, as you see, the feedback was really positive coming from them, that they feel like they're part of the culture and have had a great experience in terms of interacting with the organization. Next, we were asked to look at department. And so these are the 5 major classifications for department. Drivers, as I mentioned earlier, were the bulk of participants in the survey. And so it's really encouraging to see that their engagement scores were the highest in this mix. Following that were maintenance, customer service, operations, and the admin team, which did score a little lower there at 74%. If we look at years of service, we see a trend that shows up quite a bit in our surveys where engagement is typically going to be the highest for newer employees, and it tends to go down a little bit over time for employees who are with the organization longer term. That is typical. Couple things that aren't typical. So that less than 2 years group is typically the most engaged when you look at this slide. The reason being they're newer to the organization. There's a honeymoon aspect to being new to a place like Laketran and meeting people for the first time and experiencing certain things for the first time. But in this case, it was actually people who'd been with the organization for slightly longer at 2 to 5 years who came out on top and edged out that less than 2 years group in terms of being engaged. So that's great. We often find there's a bit of a lull in the 2 to 5 year range. Number one, that's when people are starting to be in the organization for longer, and so some of the honeymoon effect can wear off. Secondly, in a lot of cases in that 2 to 5 year range, they're starting to see offers from other organizations, looking around, thinking about advancement. And so those are all reasons why to see this reverse trend was pretty impressive. If we move to the next slide, what we do next is we look at the items that had the highest rating across the survey. And so what you're seeing here at the right-hand side are the percentage of employees who actually agreed with these statements that were in the survey. So a category like nature of the work or pride in job would have had 6 items per category. So 10 dimensions, 60 items total. But as you see here, when we look at the top 6 items across the whole survey, it was half the category for nature of the work and half the category for pride in job. So just to look at these statements a little more closely, nearly every employee agreed that their work actions can influence outsiders' views of the organization, which makes a lot of sense given the direct contact drivers have with members of the public. 98% understood that what they do in their job is important to the organization's success. Similar result for people understanding how their activities affect results. And then 96% of employees felt that their job gives them a feeling of satisfaction, that they would encourage others to work here, and that they would speak highly of this organization to other people. Again, great to see because a lot of your employees are put in settings where they have an opportunity to speak about the organization and to be champions of the mission and the vision. So that was a really encouraging result. If we move to the lowest ranked items in the survey, the one that was at the top pertained to recognition and appreciation. And so it says, I believe the better I perform, the more I will be rewarded. Now, even that deserves a little bit of context in an environment where your ability to do pay for performance is pretty limited by the nature of the agreements that you have. And so it's understandable that people recognize that and they're not going to endorse this statement because of the nature of the environment and the way compensation works. But if we look at the items below it, these are things that could potentially provide some opportunities, and we'll revisit these at the end of my presentation. But what came out was there's good communication between different organizational levels. Employees are kept informed of decisions that affect them. Changes are communicated to employees in a timely manner, and my ideas are valued within the organization. Then we asked those 3 open-ended questions, and part of our analysis was to read those responses and to pull out notable themes, things we were seeing or reading consistently as we looked across what people had to share. And so that first question, what do you like about working here? I think the things that really jumped to the top were people enjoy interacting with customers and coworkers. They enjoy working for Laketran because of the positive people they get to work with, because of the mission-driven focus of the customers they interact with. And so that's going to boost their engagement in terms of pride in job, relationships with coworkers, really a number of the categories that we were talking about a minute ago. They enjoy the positive, safe, and low-stress job environment. That really stood out to me, particularly in COVID times. I have not seen a lot of survey feedback on any survey that references low stress. If anything, stress is up across the board. So for a number of people to point that out, I thought was really outstanding. And then, as I alluded to a moment ago, the mission of Laketran and the opportunity to help people is certainly a reason why a lot of people enjoy working here, and it is a feature of the job for them. Next, we asked what people would change. A couple of things that emerged as being more thematic than limited to one or two people. One was better communication, both top down and across departments. Frankly, that's something that comes up in a lot of the surveys that we do. There's always opportunity for better communication to happen, both top down from a leadership standpoint and across departments, so that there's good coordination and collaboration across the different parts. So that is a frequent comment that people share in these surveys. Interactions with dispatch was another opportunity for improvement that a number of folks identified. And then I'd call it the fair and consistent application of policies across employees. So making sure that supervisors are disciplining employees equally, fairly, consistently was something that a few folks mentioned. Finally, we asked about Laketran's ongoing response to COVID-19. And I think the thing that really stood out the most was that a lot of people gave Laketran tons of credit for what you've done to respond to the pandemic. So, this was clearly a question that was asking for suggestions for improvement or feedback of some sort. And that typically puts people in a frame of mind of what you could do better. But they made a point, a lot of people did, of saying that they were happy with the response and they felt it was very positive and constructive. So that was far and away the biggest piece of feedback in this question. Outside of that, some things people suggested were continued vigilance with making sure that the measures that were put in place to combat COVID continue to be reinforced, particularly as time goes on and as those things, have been in place for quite some time. Limiting or eliminating repercussions when employees call off to prevent spread. More sanitization or disinfection of buses. And then offering vaccination when it becomes available. And in sharing this piece of feedback, I would say not so much, I don't think it's so much the understanding that Laketran is going to offer the vaccination, but more equipping people with resources in terms of where they can go to make appointments for that, and some general information around that, which is widely available. What we like to do at the end of these presentations is to make a few slides in terms of suggestions for building engagement. These are ways that you can most immediately act on these results and sort of carry them forward. And we pull them from the areas of the survey where the scores were a little lower, with the idea being that making improvements in these areas is most poised to increase those engagement scores across the board. So the first one that we have here is promoting better communication across the organization. And whenever you're acting on the results of an engagement survey, you always like to do some identification and get some additional information where possible. You always like to take some action to trace people's participation in the survey to tangible outcomes. And then you always want to evaluate those results a little bit down the road to make sure that you're on the right track and that the actions you're putting in place are leading to the types of results you want to see. So from a communication standpoint, there's an opportunity to identify some common sources or areas of communication breakdowns, as well as formal or informal leaders who really exemplify the type of communication you're looking to promote. Those could be supervisors who are recognized as great communicators, leaders, informal leaders, but those are folks that could really model best practices that are going to bring others along and cause communication to get better across the board. In terms of action, trying new ways of handling scenarios where communication tends to break down. So that's really troubleshooting themes you hear. Giving skilled communicators a platform to share best practices and coaching others around them. So really highlighting the approach they take and the things they do well, so that perhaps new supervisors who may not have thought that way before could practice those techniques in their own management. Holding supervisors and managers accountable for communicating key information. So how do you know if communication from the top is working its way down through the organization to everybody who needs to hear it? And so that's the goal of that action. And then drawing staff's attention to changes that result in improvements. Again, the idea being that if something's working really well for the drivers, it might be effective in maintenance as well if they want to try something like that. On the evaluation side, remeasuring perceptions of communication in 12 months is a great way to know if improvement has been made or not. And then really tracking any communication breakdowns that happen frequently to see if those are going down as you begin to troubleshoot them and to take action towards fixing them. All right, the next suggestion would be enhancing recognition and appreciation. And again, a lot of organizations find themselves in a position where there are certain elements of this, pay being one, where their ability to influence outcomes is sort of limited. There are other elements, recognition and appreciation, such as supervisors recognizing positive achievements, where you can get some leverage and do a little bit more to influence how this turns out. So in terms of identifying, linking performance to rewards or favorable outcomes is a way, good thing to identify, as well as tactics supervisors are currently using to convey appreciation for good results. In terms of action, could certainly model those best practices that supervisors are using and carry those forward with the expectation that if a leader is recognizing a manager's great performance, that manager will hopefully in turn carry that forward to their supervisors, who will in turn carry that forward to their staff, who in turn will carry it forward to their peers. And so the idea is to not only model this, but to encourage leaders throughout the organization to cascade these best practices down and across to the people that they're working with. There can be programs that incentivize or reward strong performance, and those don't have to be monetary awards. They can be praise, recognition, employee of the month types of honors. And then peer recognition programs like a kudos board or something to that effect, where people have an opportunity to call out the really positive or mission-oriented behaviors that they see their peers or colleagues engaging in. Evaluation, again, a 12-month remeasure would be great, as well as evaluating supervisors on the extent to which they engage in recognition and appreciation. In our experience, some supervisors do this a lot. Other supervisors, your recognition and appreciation is non-existent, and others may actually be more inclined to point out negative performance than they are to recognize positive performance. So it's making sure that everybody is making the time to do this. And then finally, a focus on keeping long-term employees of Laketran engaged. And so, one great way to do this is to get together a group of employees representing a cross-section of engagement, getting people in the room who are really engaged, who've been with Laketran for a long time, as well as people who may be known to be less engaged, and exploring further what it is that keeps the really engaged people engaged. Themes that you can pursue could come from some of the reports that we've shared and the open-ended feedback from employees that are in those longer tenure groups in terms of what works well and what might not work as well. In terms of action, you can roll out initiatives in response to any themes that come out in terms of being motivators or demotivators for these employees. Encourage highly engaged staff to champion positive aspects of working for Laketran. Often the words of a peer are going to be more influential than the words of a leader. So to the extent that you can encourage people who are really happy here to be forthright in sharing that with their peers, it's likely to go further. And then urging supervisors to check in with their long-term employees one-on-one to gauge how engaged they are, to identify possible concerns, and to troubleshoot those. Finally, from an evaluation standpoint, you could also reevaluate this at the 12-month point or solicit additional feedback regarding employee reactions to the initiatives you introduce. And so that is the presentation we pulled together for you today. I just paused for a moment and see if there was anything that either Aaron or Carla want to add to that.
No additions. We greatly appreciate the opportunity, and when it comes down to answering any questions, we would be happy to do that about the results and what you've seen. I know we don't want to take up too much time on the board meeting, but if there are questions, we'd be happy to answer those related to the results themselves.
I have a question. This is Denny. Have you done these kinds of evaluations with other transit organizations?
That's a great question. So this was our first transit organization that we've done this engagement survey for.
Okay, just helps put things in perspective. Thank you.
I have just one question here for you. For a survey like this, for the management of Laketran, it seems to me that there are a lot of very good positive scores on here as compared to the prior 20 organizations that you're comparing this feedback against. But you really don't have a point in time versus another point in time survey result. So it's hard to tell what direction we're going in, up or down, in terms of the responses. But, one thing that is, apparent to me, or maybe I'm wrong, I'd like to get your feedback on, when you get engagement surveys back like this, and you focus in on the things that are going wrong, you can spend a lot of time, a lot of management time, working on those things that are going wrong, and maybe not get a higher engagement score altogether. And it's just as important, if not more important, to make sure that the things that we are really highly engaged with, our employees are really highly engaged, that we not let that, go backwards. And I'm just throwing that out there. There's a certain number of studies that says that if you got 100 employees, there's going to be 20 that are automatically always disengaged. And it's really hard to get them to be engaged. It's not like you shouldn't try, but it's just really hard to get them to be engaged. So if we spend all of our time on that 20% that are disengaged and not do something or spend time making sure that we're communicating across all the organization, and we're doing the things that we do well, and we're trying to do them better, it might be a just as useful amount use of management's time as ever. But I wanted to get your comments on that and just see if if that's the way that you would see this survey and if there's any validity to that.
Thank you. I completely agree with that. So in terms of our recommendations for the survey, it really is a matter of putting some attention on those areas where engagement is lower, but also capitalizing on the areas where it is high. And great times to do that are when you are working through difficult changes or particularly challenging times. These can be great. Your top scores can be great things to appeal to in terms of motivating people, keeping them engaged to work through that. So the pride they take in their job, how much they enjoy the type of work they're doing, the types of relationships they have with people, those are definitely points to leverage. And if anything, if you see lower engaged populations, those could be things to appeal to as well that could build engagement in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any additional questions for any of the Pradco team?
Donna, I think you are trying to speak, but you're on mute still.
Oh. You guys can't hear me right now?
Okay,
Oh, sorry.
thank you, Brian. I'm curious to know of the non-administrative employees, largely that's our drivers, mechanics, and so on. Did you gather any other kind of data, like how many years they'd been with the organization, that correlates with any kind of responses? Or did you just give them the surveys and they answered it and we're just getting this as an aggregate?
So we do have, what we've provided is a set of results that is aggregate for the overall organization. We also have results that are broken down into years of service, for example, with the categories that I shared earlier on in the PowerPoint, as well as we call it department, but driver versus maintenance or admin. So we did provide some additional results that are broken down according to those categories.
Would you mind going back to that page for a moment?
Those are not in the presentation, Donna. Those are more, the report that we were provided has more detail than this overall view.
Okay, thank you.
To that point, this is Denny again. The one comment about interaction with dispatch, do we have more information on that that could be discerned or looked at another time?
Yes. So you have some of the open-ended feedback as a part of the aggregate report, which could be looked at more closely.
Thank you.
Great. Were there any other questions for Pradco? Seeing none, I think we're all set. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to go into executive session at this time?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Zibble. I believe it was seconded by Mr. Montrella. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Montrella,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Yes.
Spence, Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you. And at this time, we will go into executive session. We will invite our legal counsel and we will invite Carla with Pradco. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you there shortly. Okay, we'll start with Lisa on the financial statement.
All right, this is just the first month of the year that we'll be going over, and so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but we are below where we originally budgeted. I'll start with the operating revenues. And so in summary, our budget was $2,395,756 for our total revenues. We actually received a little bit more at $2,693,498, and that puts us about $297,742 more than what we had estimated for revenue. If you're comparing that to last year, we had $1,633,879, and the key reason for that is due to sales tax. Even though the sales tax passed in November of 2019, we actually did not receive our first payment until like July for May. And I kind of noted that at the bottom. So as of January, when we go to the expense side, the difference will be, oh, I'm sorry. Here's my little graph for the revenues, just kind of showing where we are with 2020 actual, 2021 actual, and our budget. And what kind of rate we're a little bit above. So on the expense side, just keep in mind that last year at this time, we did not have the pandemic. So our expenses for 2020 would not have that in there for actual expenses. Our 2021 budget expenses we estimated $1,797,063. We actually came in around $1,451,505. So we have spent $345,558 less than what we have budgeted so far for this year, about 19.2%. And I would say that's mainly due to the wages and benefits because the board did pass in November a new organizational chart adding some positions, and not all of those positions have been filled as of yet. And then our graph, for the 2020 actual expenses, we're at $1,352,849. One of the things I will say, we did put our new route into service in September of last year. So of course that would not be representative in the 2020 actual expenses, but it would be in our 2021. And I have the graph showing the 2021 budget at 1 million and kind of where we are right in the middle. I also did one other graph I added in this time just to kind of show the budget versus the actual for 2020. So we're slightly under what we had budgeted. And then our cash balance for January 2021, our operating, we're estimating about $8,507,000. The capital, I kind of broke out the capital for capital and headquarters so far and what our total cash is. So capital, we have about $5,208,000 set aside. Our headquarters, we have about $10,967,243. Again, I remind you, this is January, and when Ben or Julia or somebody else talks about the headquarters going on, it's probably more current at around March. So that will get updated as we go through with our financials. And STS is about 636, 578. And then our STS budget for January 2021 year to date, again, we still haven't done too much with that due to the fact of the COVID-19. So what we did was when the board passed the budget, we did it based on last year, keeping it the same since we really didn't have or didn't know when we would be going back to some type of normal with this. So therefore, there really is not much other than we have some fixed costs that we do have to pay for this. So our revenues, which are listed at the top, we estimated 3,905. We actually just received our interest revenue of 189 because we haven't had any fares for this month. So we're $3,716 less than what we had budgeted. And our actual revenue last year was $4,326. And then on the bottom for our expense, we estimated $9,746, and we are only at $6,198, and that's due to the service is the rental for us to store the buses. So that expense, we've spent less than what we budgeted by $3,548. And then if you compare it to 2020 actual, we were at that time at $8,839. And the last piece of mine is the capital projects, just kind of giving a little, based on our federal, state, and local portions, we have about $49,968,412. And then I have some notes at the bottom. Estimated headquarter costs as of January, of course, includes $19,008,819, made up of $12,068,819 of local funding needed, state funding about $670,000, and federal funding $6,270,000. And of course, that's going to change as we go through the year until we have our final numbers. And other than that, I don't have anything else unless the board has any questions.
I have a question, Lisa.
Sure, Donna.
Could we go back to the sales tax page?
Yes.
Here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the sales tax is up, but have you been able to get a handle on how robust the return is compared to what it was pre-pandemic and pre-levy?
Yes. What I did, since we didn't have any activity, and obviously since my budget amount for sales tax is the same as my actual, at the time that I did this report, I had to use the estimated amount because we had not received it. So since then, I have gotten the actual amount, and the actual amount that we've received year to date is $1,936,862. And if you were to compare that to see where we stand with where we were last year, it's pretty much doubled now. So in total, if I were to look at 20 for sales tax versus 19, we were about, if we made everything all equal, about 3.5% above what we had, what we were the year before actual. Does that answer your question, Donna?
It does. By chance, do you have that laid out on a page year to year?
I do not, because we didn't have any actual numbers for sales tax. We did not do that spreadsheet. I do have it, and I can give it to you with the 19 number on there, or email it if you'd like, or give it to Ben to give to the board so it can be sent out.
Yeah, that would, I think that would be very interesting, and that's one of my concerns is how that tax is producing, because going forward, we are going to need it in terms of, we get further down the road, closer to 30, and if the figures bear out for the the level of passengers we potentially are going to be carrying, particularly on dial-a-ride. I think it's important that we follow that sales tax closely and really pay attention to what's happening here based on everything we know, both inside Laketran and more globally.
Okay, yeah, and just Donna, for your own information too, and for the boards, I also figured out, because usually on that spreadsheet, I have an average increase for 10 years and 5 years. The average increase for 10 years is about 3.17, and if you go the last 5, it's about 2.29, with everything being equal.
Okay, well, if we could possibly see those figures month
Sure.
to month and follow that along with you, I think that would be very helpful.
Yes, I usually put it in the February packet going forward. I just didn't have anything for 2021 to put in there, but I can certainly give it to Ben to email out to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Lisa? At this time, is there a motion to accept the financial statement for January 2021, subject to audit?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zibble. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Martrella,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Spence, Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to, is it going to be Keith for the landscaping agreement?
Yes. Okay, I'm here to talk to the board and ask for permission to enter into contracts for our landscaping maintenance for the next 3 years. In the distant past, we used to go out for pricing on landscape maintenance every year, which led to a learning curve and some poor producing results from vendors every year. It took a lot of extra work on our part to make sure we got the quality that we were looking for. So in 2012, we went out and asked the board if we could do a multi-year contract. And this gave us the ability to form a better relationship with vendors, and some of our landscaping had increased, the quality had increased back then. Our 2020 contracts are expired at the end of the 2020 season, so we're here to renew them. We went out for an RFP. We've been doing this for years, and it gives us the ability to judge people on their performance and their understanding of the projects and the equipment they have. When we did it in the past, based on only price, there was a lot of issues. People were cutting corners to get the low price. They're understaffed. They didn't have the equipment they needed. Vendor for 2 or 3 years ago here at headquarters underestimated the mulch. That's how they end up having the lowest price. We did have them complete all the mulching here, but it created a financial challenge for them, and they've never bid on our projects ever again. So with the RFP, we asked for references, a 3-person team. I Googled people. We checked Better Business Bureau reports, on Angie's list, and contacted some references. One of the vendors who has participated in our RFPs in the past often scored very well on everything. We even had the ability to contact them to make sure that they had the equipment and staff size to win multiple lots. So we worked on the RFP internally. We adjust it and make improvements every year. We explain the expectations. We asked for a plan and a schedule, how the vendors were going to complete the scope of work. With Wycliffe Park and Ride and the transit center at the college being new, we expanded the scope of work for Wycliffe because there's an agreement with the state that we had to cut a little bit more grass there than what we had in the past. In the college being brand new, you'll see in the pricing pages that the first year is reduced. Years 2 and 3, the price went up. And that's because the contractor building this sites are not done with all the landscape installs. So all that's going to be handled through the construction. And then we increased some of the area at the Madison Park and Ride. The grass that was cut wasn't a big enough area in our view. So we added some more square footage to be cut. So some of the proposals we got in, they listed their machinery, their equipment, their staffing, contact people, different certificates through the state, and even some references. And one of them worked often for RTA. So a 3-person team, Mark and facilities, Andrea and myself evaluated the proposals. We each did them individually with our own interpretation, but with a predefined criteria that was in the RFP. And we graded them on the qualifications of the contractor, past performance and or references, their demonstration of understanding of the projects with a schedule and a plan of work, and a completion of all forms and including price. It surprised me at how similar the top proposers were in all 3 of our independent scorings. So you notice that headquarters wasn't in this RFP. It's been a plan ever since we started the service department, the facilities department, to reduce some of the need for outside vendors to perform some work. And we felt that landscaping or landscape maintenance at headquarters was one of the ways to do this, because it's not a highly skilled job and there's not a lot of investments. You know, lawnmowers, weed eaters with the attachments, chainsaws, rakes and shovels, a lot of stuff that most would have at home. Our facilities department fully staffed is a department of 2 people, but this is not their only work that they're going to be doing all summer. They're in charge of all facilities. So the price for headquarters was almost $20,000 in it should be the 2018 RFP. So we took this as a first stab to save an additional $20,000, hopefully. So some of the benefits for us, you know, this crew doesn't have to travel. You don't have a plan for any travel time. They could work between raindrops. They can address things as needed, and they could improve our grounds if time permits earlier than scheduled. So like here, they've already been through all the beds. Everything was prepped and edged and ready to go. And the next bullet point where it says mulching and leaf pickup, that's labor intensive for 2 people and it requires specialty equipment. Our mulch at headquarters is already done and ready to go before the season even started. So I did a price breakdown right off the RFP for each lot and the cost, and Pierce Landscaping, through our evaluations, won every lot. And then every lot except the college, where Parks Tree, who did headquarters here last year, won that lot. And on the next slide, I broke it down so the board could see all the pricing. So we're looking for approval from the board for the CEO to award contracts for lawn and landscape maintenance to the following vendors. Park Street at the college for a max price in 2023 of $4,837. And Pierce doing the Great Lakes Mall, Painesville, Shoregate, Madison, Menor, and Wickliffe at a top price in 2023 of $20,077.43 for an annual cost in 2023 of $26,914.43. It's the first time that I can remember that we've had only 2 vendors win landscaping lots for all of our properties. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
we're doing our own landscaping this year at headquarters.
Here at headquarters, yes.
Yeah, well, doesn't that require equipment?
Yes.
Did
Yes,
Go ahead.
we've already bought all the equipment, yes.
What was the cost of that?
I could break it all down. The big expense was the lawnmower, and that was $7,000 or $8,000. Then it's a chainsaw, a weed eater, a leaf blower, rakes and shovels and wheelbarrows.
Okay, well, just one machine then.
Just one lawnmower, yes.
Yeah.
Our lot here at headquarters, there isn't big fields of open grass. It's you need a smaller mower. I'm not sure what size we end up with. We were looking at a 48-inch mower stand on to do, because you need maneuverability here. It would be different at Menor where you need, a 62, 65, 70-inch mower.
Oh, just don't drive it in the lake, that's all.
That was my first rule.
Okay, well, that's
But here at headquarters, again, the equipment heavy or labor heavy stuff of spreading the mulch and picking up leaves, because we're required the leaves to be taken off site, we're still going to hire a vendor to do that.
Was that part of the contract?
No, because it falls under the price threshold. Hauling leaves out of here on a schedule, if I had to estimate, it's going to be, $1,200 to $1,600 maybe, if I had to guess. But I'm a bus guy.
And you indicated that you have two people that this work will be absorbed into their normal work schedule?
Yes,
So there will be no additional cost for labor.
correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Keith? At this time, is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into and execute an agreement for landscaping services at Laketran properties?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Mr. Sheets, did you second that? I'm sorry.
I didn't, but I will.
Okay. Thank you. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Montrella,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. The next thing we will be talking about is State of Ohio grants.
Good evening. So tonight, we are coming before the board to ask for the authority to apply for statewide grants on behalf of Laketran for state fiscal year 21 and 22. So Laketran does this every year. We require authorization from the board so that we can apply for grants. Typically, we do this in June or July, but ODOT this year has requested that we submit this resolution with our applications, which are due on April 30th. So they are accelerating the timeframe this year, and so are we. And for just a friendly reminder, the state fiscal year operates on a different schedule. The state fiscal year 2022 will begin on July 1st of this year and end on June 30th of 2022. So these are the kind of typical grant programs that are available to Laketran. As always, there might be new things that pop up, and I will have one to talk about later. But these are the kind of typical programs. Everyone has an acronym. So if you do ever see these acronyms on perhaps Lisa's financial reports or anything like that, that's what they're referring to. There are two formula grant programs that Laketran will receive, and then there are competitive grant programs that we have to write grant applications for and compete with other transit agencies in the state for funds. So our main funding sources are from ODOT, the Ohio EPA, and NOACA. Lisa actually made this chart. Our Senator Jerry Serino came to visit the Frank J. Polivka Transit Center last month, and so we provided some data for him, and I thought that it was a really good just illustration of our grant funding from 2017 to 2021. In 2020, the state budget for transportation was increased to $40 million. And so that is why we received a decent chunk of money from the state OTP2 program. And it also corresponds to the increase for the UTP program, which we use for preventive maintenance activities. So sources of state grant funding, ODAT grant programs are funded from the State General Revenue Fund, and the State General Revenue Fund is primarily from tax income from the state. GRF funds are budgeted every 2 years by the Ohio State Legislature. In Governor DeWine's executive budget that he proposed for state fiscal years 22 to 23, he initially proposed a 69% cut to public transit funding, which would cut our funding from $40 million to $7 million. That number has now changed because the biennial budget is currently being debated in the State House. So the Senate Transportation Committee has upped Transit's current budget to $37 million. So we will see where that will take us in the future. Of course, nothing is set in stone at this time. The Ohio EPA grant programs are funded from congestion mitigation air quality funds, also known as CMAQ. And then there's also a program from the Volkswagen settlement. There's $75 million that the state was awarded from that. And then the TLCI program at NOACA is funded with federal highway dollars. So, you know, the grant world can change quickly. And in the last 2 weeks, we've been notified that the governor has authorized $7 million for Ohio transit agencies to help transport people to vaccine locations. So the state is calling this the Rides to Community Immunity. And I was on a call on Thursday where we were told that we are supposed to also get board authorization to use these funds. Laketran has been allocated nearly $139,000 to support providing transportation to our community, to vaccine locations. So last week on March 17th, Laketran began providing a vaccine shuttle. It is free. It takes Lake County residents from the Frank J. Polivka Transit Center at Lakeland to the Wolstein Center, where there is the mass vaccination clinic. So there are 17 departures daily, Monday through Friday, and the vaccination clinic is currently estimated to operate for 8 weeks. If there are any additional questions about that, I'm sure Matt or Julia can answer questions about the vaccine shuttle that we're providing. So Laketran uses our state funding for a lot of different things, primarily preventive maintenance of our fleet and facilities, vehicle replacements, dial-a-ride, and capital improvement projects like equipment purchases and construction. So we recommend that the board approve the attached resolution authorizing the filing of applications for statewide grants and includes the Rides to Community Immunity program. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Go
That
ahead.
$138,000, is that going to cover our costs?
It will, yes.
Okay, good.
I have a similar question in that is this federal money that ODOT was the designated recipient for, or is this state funds that we're getting?
Let me see. I believe it is FEMA dollars, so Federal Emergency Management Agency dollars. That was given to the state that is being sent to us.
And is that only going to the clinic in Cleveland, or is that also helping pay for the dial-a rides that are taking people to sites inside Lake County?
We can do either. I think we will be spending a majority of the ODOT money on the vaccine shuttle, but we've been providing free transportation on dial-a-ride to vaccine appointments for several weeks now, even before this program was announced. And we will continue to do so.
What the split is on that, or is Lisa still in the room? Do you know, Lisa?
Yeah, the ODOT funds are at 100%. Is that what you're asking, Donna?
No, I'm asking about the allocation between the shuttle and the dial-a-ride.
I think at this point, we are planning to use 100% of the ODOT funds on the vaccine shuttle. But if there are any leftover funds, we will be using it to support the dial-a-ride free rides.
And I'll add to that real quick, Donna. So the vaccine shuttle to CSU is eligible for additional FEMA reimbursement at the end of the program. So it is a little bit of a wait and see how many dial-a-ride trips are performed during the same time period, so that we can, if we need to allocate the ODOT money to the dial-a-ride trips and then recover additional money for the vaccine shuttle through FEMA, we'll do so. So it's kind of a moving target. Once it's all said and done, we should be able to cover most of the cost, if not all of it, between the ODOT money and additional FEMA dollars that will be available at the conclusion of the vaccine shuttle service.
Thank you very much, Ben. That's exactly the information I was looking for.
Any other questions in the room?
Not me.
At this time, is there a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the filing of applications with the Ohio Department of Transportation and any and all state agencies for state fiscal year 2022 transportation grants, including but not limited to Ohio Transit Partnership Program, Urban Transit Program, Ohio Elderly and Disabled Fare Assistance Program, Diesel Emission Reduction Grant, the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Fund, Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative, Rides to Community Immunity Program, and any additional grants ensuring to the benefit of Laketran and its objectives related to its mission statement and otherwise.
Everything you just said, so moved.
Second.
And motion made by Ms. McNamee, seconded by Mr. Sheets. Vicky, if you could please call the roll.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Montrella,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Ben for the 6-month look ahead.
So on page, or good evening, everyone, I guess I should say. So on page 28 of your packet is the 6-month look ahead. There have been some changes since last month. So in April, we will expect to have a presentation from Arnell Bowen about the design development or phase 2 of the headquarters expansion and renovation project. We will request approval for the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, we refer to as PTASP. That is a routine initiative that started last year. It has to be approved per the FTA. We expect to have an approval request for the strategic plan consultant. We have interviews this week and next week, so things are moving along with that project as scheduled. In May, the first electric bus should be available for the board to view. It is scheduled to get here the week of the 26th. If any of you would like to see it individually or take a ride or anything like that in advance, feel free to reach out to me and I am happy to set up a time to show you the bus. We will present you with a public hearing on the results of the Route 13 public hearings. They'll be presented by staff. We will present a draft of the annual report for the board to review, again, presented by staff. We will request annual reapproval of the equivalent service plan, which was again first adopted by the board in September of 2020. Our hope, I'm sorry, I should have this on the screen. I just realized too many things at once. Our plan is to start using this after the plan is audited by the feds in our triennial review, which is has started. Hopefully everything goes well and we can actually start implementing that and putting some some even smaller vehicles into service. We also, this next item is not in your packet because it happened relatively quickly. We will request approval for a server room air conditioner replacement. Traditionally in our server room, we use a standard mini split system that you can buy from any kind of HVAC contractor. They're typically $6,000 to $7,000 installed. But for the duty cycle that they work in our server room, they have a pretty high failure rate. And they just ultimately, with the amount of failures that occur for us, they are not the best solution that exists, or we weren't sure if they were the best solution that existed. So we hired Tech Engineering, which is a local engineering and mechanical firm, to sort of look at the room and say, hey, is this the right solution for this room based on the high failure rate? Or is there some other piece of equipment that we should be using? Because this is sort of a, we understand your traditional air conditioning systems. The server room is sort of a unique animal. I'm sure Mr. Sheets knows lots about this topic. So we are just now beginning the process to do an RFP. We haven't actually done one yet. It is in the works, and we plan to have an approval to the board in May. The price range we got from the engineering firm was $35,000 to $40,000. We're not 100% sure yet if that is the right number. We still have some more research to do because this came up last minute. This is a draft, but I wanted to at least make the board aware of it, that they would see it in May. So more information to come. And I may reach out to you, Elaine, to ask you some air conditioning questions.
They have an answer.
In June, we will have an approval request similar to what we just did tonight for our federal grant authority. And in July, we still do not have any items to report at the time of this report. We have some pending things that will probably show up next month. In September, we will have we will ask for approval, at least in the current schedule, for a construction contract with the lowest bidder on the headquarters construction project. Looks like I left off that we will have a presentation from the auditor that month also, which will be presented probably by staff and potentially the state auditors if they are able to travel. They have COVID restrictions along with restrictions about traveling a certain proximity to pending elections. And then an approval request for the approval of the CAFR, which is a routine item. So a couple small changes, nothing incredibly major that we foresee in our next 6-month period. Unless anybody has any questions, I can move on over to the CEO report.
I think you're good to go, Ben.
So on actually starts on page 29 is my report for this month. There's a little bit of a focus on the headquarters building, mainly because the American Rescue Plan Act was passed, and there is an estimated $9.3 million in that plan that would be allocated to Laketran by formula, which if all of it were allocated to the headquarters project at its current budget, we would be overfunded by about $4.3 million. This ultimately means that there will be zero local dollars except for potentially a couple small bits required to match existing grants, but in general, essentially no Laketran sales tax would need to be spent on the headquarters project at all. Additionally, we don't know the exact number yet, but we would also be able to put a minimum of $1.5 million into our reserve account, even completing the headquarters budget or the headquarters project. There still obviously are a lot of kind of moving pieces in this. We have not gotten an official allocation, This allocation is based off previous awards. For reference, the CARES Act had $25 billion allocated to public transit in it, and we received just under $8 million. The American Rescue Plan Act has $30 billion in it. And so based on our estimates, we should be somewhere in that $9.3 to $9.5 million range. Again, that comes to us by formula. So we will be kind of watching for that. The nice part is that it will allow us to complete this project with no local sales tax. The other thing that is sort of important to keep in mind, and this is something that is not a requirement, but it is a sort of a guideline that the feds continue to kind of ask us about. I would expect to ultimately see some data reporting about it, which is how did we use the money to sort of continue operations or, stimulate the economy. Now, I know it's not, necessarily Laketran's core job to stimulate the economy, but that is one of the desired outcomes of these funds. And so they will most likely ask us questions in audits, how we did that, what the funds were used for, how we sort of either didn't lay off employees or did sort of other projects. So the headquarters project does fit squarely into those categories that the FTA sort of judges us on, or at least they did in the past, which is, like our best examples are when they did the original stimulus in 2009. Construction was a big topic then. It's obviously a slightly different world, but we're expecting sort of similar reporting outcomes of the whole thing, which is why construction fits in well. How many jobs did you retain and keep and create and all those things. So that's good news for us. Next, I mentioned the strategic plan in the 6-month look ahead. We have received 8 proposals for the project. Some are from vendors we have worked with in the past, including WSP, who did our previous plan. Others are new to us, which means we did a good job reaching out to new vendors. We are on schedule for the request to approve that in April. The budgets are pretty much where we expected, ranging between $55,000 to $150,000. So those are in the general ballpark of what we were looking for. Each vendor has, a different price depending on what sort of outcomes they are planning on doing. So we'll learn more about that at the next meeting. Lastly, the Frank J. Polifka Transit Center is now open. We opened it a little bit quicker than we had really wanted to. There were kind of a couple loose ends that we wanted to finish, but with the vaccine service that ODOT was asking us to do, it served as an excellent nexus for that program. So we sort of rushed the completion a little bit. There were no major issues that we needed to take care of, just some loose ends. But so it is open. The public is using it. The drivers have bathrooms there, which is great. We still plan a grand opening when the weather is better and COVID is a little bit more under control. The charging infrastructure is still currently being installed and will continue through the end of this month, potentially into April. So those are sort of the main overviews of my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Ben, quick question, probably unrelated, but what is the experience to date, or what do you believe will be the experience in carrying the folks to downtown for the shots, the virus shots? Do we have any information like that at all?
When you say experience, do you mean like usage type information or?
Yeah, right.
It's been, I would say, underperforming what we would have liked to have seen. The nature of the service is sort of, the governor and ODOT were really trying hard to make the project a success, since this was one of 2 mass vaccination sites in the US. So I know me and the staff here would like ridership to be a little bit better, but vaccines are becoming so available that it makes sense that it's not great, but it is also paid for. So this is one of those things that they asked for last minute. The governor viewed transit as a way to make sure that it was equitable across all boards, that anyone could get a shot. So I would say that the service is underperforming what we would like, is the overall sort of end result.
Do you suspect
Go ahead, Denny. Go ahead, Denny. I apologize.
I was just going to say, do you suspect that it'll be shut down by the end of the month, of next month?
The service or the vaccination site?
The vaccination site or both?
FEMA and the National Guard are mobilized to complete that vaccination site. We haven't received any indications that they would shut it down early. I know there was some press today in the news that if a person that was younger could find an available appointment, they were allowed to go. So it is conceivable that they would shut it down early, but they don't have any experience yet with opening it up to all age ranges. So my guess is they wouldn't make that decision right away. But that's a really good question because it's not something that we are really sure about. And, we're kind of reacting as the process goes. So there is still some sort of uncertainty there.
Thank you.
What I was going to share, Ben, is that I heard that these large sites were not performing well and they were going to eliminate appointments so that hopefully they would be able to serve more people if they knew that they could just walk in.
Yeah, there is actually, myself or Matt is on a daily conference call about this service that is every day, including Saturdays and Sundays. And it changes very rapidly. So we don't always know, what the plan is or what the changes are that are about to happen. So it's very much a fluid sort of reactionary situation. I would not be totally shocked if the service ended early, whether it was either our service that ended early or the actual vaccination site. But we have been very strongly encouraged by all the parties to sort of keep the service running while the vaccine service is available. So we would, unless they sort of indicate otherwise, we wouldn't want to kind of get, crossways with FEMA, the National Guard, and the governor's office. So it's one of those sort of keep running it, even though it might not be the most productive service that we offer, but it's also being paid for. So it's kind of an interesting situation.
What other transit systems are running the service besides Laketran and GCRTA?
Right now, this vaccination center is, only in Cleveland, so it's really only us and GCRTA that are doing it. The other transit systems in the region don't really have the capacity to run any dedicated service to the Wallstein Center like us and RTA do. So as of today, it's just the two of us.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Ben? Okay, Ben, thank you.
And I will say real quick, I had planned on having Mike give his director's report tonight. I know we had some presentations earlier in the night, so I kind of prepped him in advance that we might delay that until next week. So we are going to kind of make a gameplay decision and defer that presentation until a later meeting.
Great, thank you. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? Thank you, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sheets, seconded by Ms. McNamee. Vicky, could you please call the roll one last time?
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Mantrella,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a nice start to their spring. It looks beautiful out. See everyone soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.